Profession by Isaac Asimov, beginning on the bottom of page 49. George watched eagerly as the visiplate lit up. It would open up a window into a room of Novians, a window into a small patch of Novia transplanted to Earth. In 24 hours, he had accomplished that much. There was a burst of laughter as the plate unmisted and sharpened, but for the moment, no single head could be seen, but rather the vast passing of the shadows of men and women, this way and that. A voice was heard, clear-worded over a background of babble. Inginescu? He wants me? Then there he was, staring out of a plate, a Novian, a genuine Novian. George had not an atom of doubt. There was something completely outworldly about him, nothing that could be completely defined or even momentarily mistaken. He was swarthy in complexion, with a dark wave of hair combed rigidly back from his forehead. He wore a thin black mustache and a pointed beard, just as dark that scarcely reached below the lower limit of his narrow chin. But the rest of his face was so smooth that it looked as though it had been depilated permanently. He was smiling. Ladislas, this goes too far. We fully expect to be spied on within reason during our stay on Earth, but mind reading? Out of bounds. Mind reading, Honorable? Confess. You knew I was going to call you this evening. You knew I was only waiting to finish this drink. He moved up into view, and his eye peered through a glass of faintly violet liquor. I can't offer you one, I'm afraid. George, out of range of Inginescu's transmitter, could not be seen by the Novian. He was relieved by that. He wanted time to compose himself, and he needed it badly. It was as though he were made up exclusively of restless fingers drumming, drumming, drumming. But he was right. He hadn't miscalculated. Inginescu was important. The Novian had called him by his first name. Good. Things worked well. What George had lost on Antonelli, he would make up, with advantage, on Inginescu. And someday, when he was on his own at last, he could come back to Earth as a powerful Novian as this one, who could negligently joke with Inginescu's first name and be addressed as Honorable in turn. When he came back, he would settle with Antonelli. He had 1.5 years to pay back, and he all but lost his balance on the brink of the enticing daydream and snapped back in sudden anxious realization that he was losing the thread of what was going on. The Novian was saying, "Doesn't hold water. Novia has a civilization as complicated and advanced as Earth's. We are not the story, after all. It's ridiculous that we have to come here for individual technicians." Inginescu said soothingly, "Only for new models. There is never any certainty that the new models will be needed. To buy the educational tapes would cost you the same price as 1,000 technicians. And how do you know you would need that many?" The Novian tossed off what remained of his drink and laughed. It displeased George somehow that a Novian should be this frivolous. He wondered uneasily if perhaps the Novian ought not to have skipped that drink, and even the 1 or 2 before that. The Novian said, "That's typical pious fraud, Ladislas. You know that we can make use of all the late models we can. I collected 5 metallurgists this afternoon." "I know," said Inginescu. "I was there." "Watching me. Spying," cried the Novian. "I'll tell you what it is. The new model metallurgist I got differed from the previous model only in knowing the use of the Beeman spectrographs. The tapes couldn't be modified that much. Not that much." He held up 2 fingers close together. "From last year's model. You introduced the new models only to make us buy them and spend and come here hat in hand." "We don't make, you buy." "No, but you sell late model technicians to Landonum, and so we have to keep pace. It's a merry-go-round you have us on, you pious earthmen. But watch out, there may be an exit somewhere." There was a sharp edge to his laugh, and it ended sooner than it should have. Inginescu said, "In all honesty, I hope there is. Meanwhile, as to the purpose of my call." "Oh, that's right, you called." "Oh, well, I've had my say, and I suppose next year there'll be a new model of metallurgist, anyway, for us to spend goods on. Probably the new gimmick for niobium assays and nothing else altered. And the next year. But go on, what is it that you want?" "I have a young man here whom I wish you to speak." "Oh?" The Novian looked not completely pleased with that. "Concerning what?" "I can't say. He hasn't told me. For that matter, he hasn't even told me his name and profession." The Novian frowned. "Then why take up my time?" "He seems quite confident that you will be interested in what he has to say." "I dare say." "And, said Inginescu, as a favor to me." The Novian shrugged. "Put him on and tell him to make it short." Inginescu stepped aside and whispered to George, "Address him as honorable." George swallowed with difficulty. This was it. That ends the section in the middle of page 52.